Today I'm going to do a training video on an Apex tincture filling line. This has automatic filling and automatic capping all on one common conveyor and frame. First, there is a loading table where you will put all of your containers. This flag here will sort the containers out, and they'll come off one by one and load onto the conveyor. You will need to set your rails appropriately so that the spacing around the bottles is just enough to contain them, but not too tight that they get hung up. The filling machine is a dual head 60 ml machine with a hopper. The product comes from the hopper into the cylinders and out the fill nozzles and into the bottles. First thing you will need to do is set up your indexing gates, your entry gate and your exit gate in the correct position so that the bottles line up correctly underneath the fill heads. The exit gate will be on the far right, and the last bottle will have the second fill head over the top of it, and then you will have a blank bottle, the entry gate, another blank bottle, and then the fourth bottle underneath the first fill head. This is called every other bottle indexing. The way it works is the filled bottle here, when the exit gate opens and all the bottles move, it will move 2 positions, 1, 2, and end up right there, so it doesn't get double filled. The one that's in the empty position here will move 1, 2, and get filled by the second head. There will always be 2 full containers exiting that are full. An important sensor to remember to have set up correctly is the count eye here. This sensor is detecting each bottle that passes by, and when the correct count of 2, which is the amount of fill heads you have, 1, 2, is counted, the machine knows that the bottles are in place and the fill cycle can begin. You should see a blink on the sensor every time a bottle goes by. 1, 2, see? We point it at the necks of the bottles so that you can see a gap in between the containers. If the sensor was on the body of the containers, it wouldn't always see a gap in between the containers and not count the appropriate number. The fill heads have knobs that allow you to adjust them over the center lines of the bottles if they weren't properly lined up. And you also have the option of diving the heads down into the bottles. And there is a hand wheel here at the very top of the dive that will limit how far down the heads go into the bottles. To adjust the volume of product coming out of the fill heads, you will move this reed switch right here to limit the amount of stroke the cylinders have, the amount of stroke the pistons have, to limit the amount of product that comes out of the nozzles. If you want less product, you move this to the right, and if you want more product, you move it to the left. The next sensor you'll see on the line is just after the fill heads, right here. If this sensor is blocked, this is the backup sensor. This will inhibit the filler and keep bottles from exiting the filler. Until this sensor is clear, the filler will not function in automatic mode. But the minute that the sensor is clear, the cycle will continue on. You'll see a touchscreen on the main control box for the filler. This is where you will be able to set all of your indexing times and turn fill heads on or off. And you will also set your conveyor speed on this control box as well. Conveyor speed is important because the indexing gates are based off of time, and depending on how fast the conveyor is running will determine how much time is needed for 2 bottles to exit the machine. This timer can be found in the set timer screen. In-feed count will always be 2, that's the number of bottles that you're counting. Delay fill is how long it waits to fill after bottles are in place. Piston retract and piston extend delays are both set to 0. Your entry delay and your exit duration. Exit duration is the amount of time it takes 2 bottles to exit the filling zone. The entry delay is how big of a gap in between these sets of bottles there will be so that a bottle will not get caught by the exit gate. The NBNF timer is no bottle, no fill. That is how long a bottle needs to be in front of the count sensor before the entry gate will close and the fill cycle will begin. The restart delay is how long it waits after the fill is complete before starting a new cycle. And the piston stroke count is set to 1. That is to only do a 30 ml fill. To do anything bigger than a 60 ml fill, you will have to stroke multiple times on the pistons. Turn to main. The manual toggle screen is used to manually operate anything that the filler can do in automatic mode. So I am able to open and close the entry gate, open and close the exit gate, and also have the conveyor run in continuous mode. I'm also able to stroke each of the pistons. This will ignore the limit switch and stroke it a full stroke. This is used for priming and for clean out. And I'm also able to dive the heads down into the bottles to set my dive height. To start a fill cycle, all you do is press the fill button here and a cycle will begin. When I press fill on, the exit gate will open and the entry gate will open after that set period and index the bottles through. I have the fill heads off right now, so the heads do not dive down and the pistons do not stroke. The next step on this line is the automatic chuck capper. You will hand place eyedroppers into the bottles and hand start them and get the dropper on the starter thread so that it does not cross thread. To set this machine up, it is very similar to the filler. You'll see that there is 3 indexing gates, a gripper that holds the bottle, a backing plate that provides the backstop for the bottle to be pushed against so that the capping head can tighten down the cap. This also has a sensor at the beginning of the machine. This is confirming that there are bottles ready for the capping machine. This does not count bottles, this only tells the machine that there are bottles available for capping. You want to set the exit gate here so that the bottle is in alignment with the gripper and also in alignment with the capping head. The other 2 gates here, the one on the right, is to hold the rest of the bottles back and keep them out of the capping zone. The position here is not real important as long as it's prior to the gripper. This gate here, when a bottle is indexed, will close and this index gate will open and allow just one bottle out into the capping zone. The next sensor you see is a backup sensor. If this sensor is blocked, if your table is completely full, this is your accumulation table. If this table is full and the sensor is blocked, no bottles will be able to leave the capper. To set the capper up, you can use the manual toggle screen. The control box is mounted to the capper, and when you go to the manual screen, we can activate the locator, which grips the bottle, and also control the head dive. When I press locator out, that will bring the gripper out and hold the bottle. The gripper needs to be tight enough that the bottle does not spin inside the gripper. It should be very tight. You can loosen the bolts up underneath the gripping actuator and push it forward to get more grip on the bottle. It should not be able to spin. The head height here is adjusted with this hand wheel. You want the capping head to come all the way down onto the cap of the bottle and press down tightly so that it does not slip on the cap when the capping head is turning. There is a clutch located here that can be adjusted by turning this collar to reduce or increase the amount of torque that is applied to the cap to tighten the cap. I'm going to dive the head down and show you how the capping head comes down onto the bottle. The capping head stopped because the clutch pressure was reached. If this continues to spin, the clutch pressure is either too high or the capping head is not down far enough on the bottle to actually press on the cap and hold it securely. That would mean you would need to lower the capping head with your hand wheel. I'm going to raise the head up and allow the locator to go back. I'm going to run an automatic cycle and show you what this is supposed to look like. We will do that by going to the main screen and pressing capper off, which will turn it to on and run an automatic cycle. The timers are going to be similar to the filling machine. The indexing gates have a time to allow the single bottle to exit the capping zone and a new bottle to enter. When I hit set timers, you'll see capper delay. That's how long the capper waits to dive down when the bottle is in place. The capper duration is how long the capping head is turned on and the dive is down to cap the bottle. The index duration is the amount of time it takes a bottle to get lined up underneath the capping head. This will be determined by the conveyor speed. The delay restart is how long the capper waits to restart the cycle after the capping is completed. The delay sensor is how long a bottle needs to be in front of the backup sensor and the container available sensor for the machine to see this container. Delay locator retract is important. It is how long after capping is done and the capping head begins to lift before the gripper locator assembly moves back. If this time is too low, the bottles will get picked up out of the locator. Returning to our main screen, we're going to turn the capper on and show you what it is to cycle bottles through the capper. If the capper is set up correctly, your containers will come out with the cap on tight and no obvious damage to the caps. There is a setup screen where you can turn certain features on or off. Go to setup, you can turn the indexing off. You would never want to do this because it will not automatically index the bottles to the capper. If you turn sensor off, it will not know if there's bottles to be capped, and it will run continuous. And locator needs to be in auto as well, because otherwise the locator gripper assembly will not function. That is the Apex capper and piston filler automatic line for tincture filling.